Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. Happy to be here. It's a blessing to be with each and every one of you. Our phone number, if you want to give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And things don't stop coming out of the White House, coming out of Washington. El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, has announced that the Doge service, right? It's USDS, the United States Doge service, will be announcing an investigation into how some members of Congress got strangely wealthy. That message coming from the chair of the service, Elon Musk himself. Pretty interesting stuff. And he's going to be looking into how they got strangely wealthy. He said this speaking at a town hall in Wisconsin last night, suggesting that his team at the Department of Government Efficiency, also known as Doge, will investigate how these guys did it, guys and girls. I'm guessing Nancy Pelosi's part of that list. And I love it. Listen, I love it. It's great. It's great for a lot of things. And one of the things that I'm going to say here that some people may not like, but it's this. We need to make sure that whatever happened, whatever malfeasance went on, the way that Nancy Pelosi got filthy rich, whether it was insider trading, and I'm not saying that it was. I'm guessing that had something to do with it, right? Unless the joke about her having the best stock tips in the world is just a joke. I'm guessing, that might be part of it. I'm sure there's a lot of ways that people in government enrich themselves. And those days are over. We can't continue that way because the largesse has dissipated. It's not there anymore for us to keep ripping ourselves off or ripping off the taxpayer. And I'm not saying that's why we have to stop. I'm just saying you literally can't continue. The system as we know it is hanging by a thread. No matter what anybody says to you, just think of this. Is the dollar as strong as it was when you were a kid? And is that 4% inflation? I'm going to argue no, right? Inflation is one thing, but the deflated dollar, or I should say the inflated dollar, however you want to look at it, it doesn't have the buying power that it did. And this is due to a number of things. And I think we've kind of indoctrinated our society into thinking, well, it's just everything goes up. Maybe. But you look at other periods in life where things didn't go up that much. Kind of like climate change, right? Kind of like the sea levels and whatnot. They stay relatively close for long periods of time. And they might go down a little bit. They might go up a little bit. But we can almost bank on things not making sense. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. And I hope somebody proves me wrong here. But is $1 million or $500,000 for a home the new normal? Is that what I should expect my children to do? Right? Again, I do live on the East Coast. I realize that. And I know I can do a Google that will give me some number they want me to believe. But I also look at real estate. And when I'm looking at real estate, I don't see much give. Right? I saw something the other day that said, I always look in Miami. I'm looking to steal something in Miami. And I saw something that said prices are down $20,000 or $30,000 from last year. Yeah, the problem is last year they were still high. And guess what? When you do this overall Miami, that's the outskirts of the hot spots like South Beach and Brickell and stuff like that. Coral Gables area. These things are still expensive. People want to be there. So what happens? Those prices are going up, and they keep going up. I don't see anything that's selling in the Brickell area that's getting cheaper. So I say that to say the same thing with like the waterfront on New Jersey that faces New York City. So you wake up and open your window and boom, you're looking at the Empire State Building, the George Washington Bridge, the Freedom Tower. All of that stuff doesn't get any cheaper either. So am I praying for some sort of a market crash? No. But I'm saying every kid that's coming out of college has to be able to afford the American dream, their version of the American dream, right? It's buying a condo, buying a home, starting a business, doing something with their money. And what kind of money do they need to earn in order to pull that off? I can tell you, it's a challenge. And this is why you've got kids now into their 30s living at home and families redesigning the way that they live life because kids can't go off and get married and do things as early because they're saving for so long because it costs so much. And I look at just in my area, right? I'm in Bergen County, New Jersey, and I realize it's a little pricey up here, but there's a bunch of houses that cost $1 million that you wouldn't likely think cost $1 million. And if you go across the Hudson into New York, same thing. You go into the boroughs. About 10 years ago, most of those brick single-family, multifamily, like two-family type of things, they were going for $750 10 years ago. So where is the give here? Are people just magically going to make more money? Is $80K now just going to afford you $1 million home? I don't think so. So something's got to give eventually. And I'm presuming that things will pick up and we'll start seeing people. You're going to see some wage increases, right? The last time Trump was in office, wages went up. Great. Real wages went up. That was fantastic. The median household income went up. That was fantastic. But with that still happening, that doesn't mean that home prices are going to come down. And it's not going to be commensurate, at least not yet. Right? So we have to have some large economic conversations to figure out how this is going to work. And Elon Musk is asking the right questions when he says, how did members of Congress get so strangely wealthy? And I have to agree with him. It makes a lot of sense. Why did they become so wealthy? What do they know that we didn't? Because after all, they are the ones that get to spend our money, the money that they voluntarily take from us, but try to voluntarily not pay taxes. See how that goes. Anyway, that was an unplanned tangent. That was just in my head. But what I was going to say was some of the things that are going to happen here. We're going to find out things, right, that may get referred for criminal referrals. And in years past, you had an FBI that was neutered and a paper tiger. And now, perhaps we have some of the best people I've seen at the FBI, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. So we can expect them to look into things. But can we expect them to get every single bad guy that we don't like? Can we expect them to press charges for treason on every last crooked politician or otherwise bureaucrat? I don't think so. But I do think we have to correct the record and make sure you plug the hole. Even if you don't get the arsonist who burnt down the building, you've got to make sure you put that fire out so that building stops burning and it doesn't burn down the whole neighborhood. And I think that's what they're focused on. And Godspeed to them, because it's a yeoman's task. You've got a handful of good people fighting, I'm going to say, an entire city of swamp creatures in Washington. So we'll get into a bunch of that stuff tonight. There's a lot of things I want to talk about, but one of the things that I want to hit on, or a few things tonight, I want to hit on Trump and his successes, right? There's been polls coming out. We're going to talk about some of the polls, of course, but there's also some reports saying, the media is still oddly optimistic about why, or even trying to understand why Trump did well with black men, with Hispanic men, even Hispanic women. Why did Trump do well with his population? They're supposed to hate him. Why do they hate him? Well, we're going to get into that in a little bit, because that's a question I think is poorly phrased, honestly, for the media to be even asking it that way. But we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to get into what is going on with Greenland. I want to know. Well, we have a former ambassador joining us in a little bit to talk about that and potentially what is going on with the banning of Marine Le Pen, who was trying to run for president or prime minister in in France, and they put the kibosh on that as well. So keep it locked right here. Lots to come. Your calls and more. Open phones across America. Last couple of segments of each hour. I know we have a lot to discuss because the weekend was ahead of us. So we're regrouping. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come.
That, of course, Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th and 47th President of these United States. I'm Rich Valdez, keeping you company, working the late shift with you, the night shift straight till midnight, 1 a.m. And I want to jump into this because I saw this article in the Washington Examiner, Trump turning Black and Hispanic voters into Republicans. This came out, I think, on Saturday, maybe Friday morning. And it talks about this approval number going up from the Gallup poll, increasing from his first term from 42% to 45%. But the gains have been so much bigger with minorities. So I want to get a little bit of analysis on this because I think this is an interesting phenomena that the media is somewhat largely silent about. You don't hear a ton of it, right? Gallup put out some of their numbers, but we don't hear CNN harping on this, saying, oh my gosh. Now we did, to their credit. We did hear Harry Enton on CNN last week saying that Trump is doing a lot better now than he had in the past. I don't know if you remember that clip. So we have to give them kudos for remembering that Trump is outperforming his previous performance. But specifically with Hispanic voters and Black voters, he continues to show that he's doing a great job. So I want to tap into this with somebody who understands this really well. She's was a senior advisor to the RNC, former senior advisor to the Trump campaign. She at one point oversaw Hispanic communications. Danielle Alvarez, welcome back.
It's so great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So I'm not sure if you had a chance to take a look at this this piece in the Washington Examiner, but I thought it was interesting. And most of the media is largely silent about these gains that were cited by the Gallup poll.
Of course they are. As soon as President Trump is doing well, they stop talking about any particular issue. And the reality is that President Trump has had the right approach to minority groups. You know, I'm a member of the Hispanic American community. My parents are Cuban. They fled the communist Cuban regime. I'm born and raised in Miami from South Florida. So really, I've been surrounded by these issues my entire life. And what President Trump did was really straightforward. What he's always done is really straightforward. And it's treat every single community like each other. We are all Americans. We all care about doing well economically, about getting, great education for our kids, about being able to, build a business, put more money in our pockets. And I remember the conscious decision I had with one of my colleagues, Alex Garcia, when we said, we're going to propose, instead of doing, Hispanics for Trump or whatever it may be, we said, we're going to do Hispanic Americans for Trump. We're going to do Black Americans for Trump. We're going to do Asian Americans for Trump, because the key there was that everyone would succeed under President Trump, and he wouldn't have to approach this as Democrats had in years past by dividing coalitions. It was about bringing people together, and there was one thing particularly that always sticks in my head when he said to everybody, when we succeed, everyone will succeed. And I think it's rung true in his first few months in office.
What in particular, Danielle Alvarez, stands out to you? Because I think there's so many places to pick, but with respect to this community that we're talking about, Hispanics and African Americans, who really, and I think they weren't shy either, the bunches that I saw. I went to the rally in the Bronx. I went to a couple of them. I went to the rally in Madison Square Garden, and I saw people that were the most enthusiastic people there were the Latinos. The second most enthusiastic group that was there were the African Americans. So what do you think that's happening right now coming out of the White House is exciting that base?
I think the first things first is we have to look at the way that, minority communities were left behind by Democrats. Democrats didn't treat minority communities holistically, really tried to focus on divisive politics. And one of the things that I've had conversations with many people is when things are bad, you have to focus on the basics. And so we had just left 4 years of the greatest economy under President Trump, his first administration when he was 45. We had a great economy. Everyone was thriving. And then we went to Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, we saw a horrific economy. We saw government really getting in the way of individuals who wanted to do business, lots of regulation, lots of red tape. And we're seeing President Trump really undoing that. Now, listen, it's very difficult to undo 4 years of a horrible administration that tanked our economy, sent inflation through the roof. Prices have been sky high, but we're already seeing those prices come down. We're seeing that because President Trump is bringing back regulation, cutting red tape, and certainly unleashing American energy. And I think that's one. I think the first group of people that we saw really were, men, Hispanic men, Black men, and they were very focused on those economic issues. They wanted to return back to a prosperous Trump economy. And again, I think that that's what we're seeing under this administration. Of course, it's great, it's hard, but it's only been a couple of months of the Trump economy, and we're already seeing those prices come down a little bit. We're seeing President Trump really focus on American made, really putting Americans first, really pulling levers on tariffs to make sure that our country and our communities and our neighborhoods are put first. The second thing that we really saw is the minority communities didn't align with Democrats' extreme social issues, and one of the first things that President Trump did was sign an executive order to make sure that men weren't playing in women's sports. I can't tell you how often I was in that same South Bronx rally that you were at. I was in that same Madison Square Garden rally that you were at. We would hear that as I would travel with the president across the country from minority communities, from every community, who just said, my gosh, this is just such a basic principle. Biologically, right. Men and women are not the same. And biologically, men should not compete in women's sports. And, we've heard stories time and time again, of course, whether it's swimming, whether it's, in fight sports and combat sports, whether it was volleyball. I mean, it was just very dangerous because you had, in many instances, men competing in women's sports and hurting women. And so I think we've seen a lot of successes that resonate with minority communities from President Trump because he's fulfilling his campaign promises. Yep,
promises made, promises kept. Danielle, stand by. We're going to take a pause right here. We're coming right back. Amigos, we come back with Danielle Alvarez, former senior advisor to the Trump campaign, Hispanic comms person, a spokesperson. She's a rock star, and she's coming right back with us live from Miami. Danielle Alvarez and me, Rich Valdez.
I have listened to you for the last 2 years inside of the United States Penitentiary at Terre Haute, Indiana.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
55% of Latino men voted for Trump. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I think that economically, they were looking at things. First of all, in this country, you've got Cubans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Guatemalans, Venezuelans, Colombians, et cetera, et cetera. And if you talk to the Hispanic community, depending on who you're talking to, they think differently. The Cubans think differently than the Dominicans. The Dominicans think different than Colombians. To some, the economy was a priority. To some, believe it or not, it was the border. You had some folks within the Hispanic populace that were encouraging the borders to be closed.
They want to pull the.
But here's why that's so imperative. It's so important, because we're not Latinos. We're not Latinos. We're not Latinos. They're telling you that's what we want. Yeah. We had to stay online. We had to be online in order to get in. Who are you to bypass the line? And one of my friends, I remember he used this analogy, and I never forget this as long as I live. He said, you like Six Flags, go to Great Adventures? I said, I have. He said, sure. Disney World? Sure, I have. Of course I have. He said, so you stand in line, Take about 2 hours to get on some of these rides because they're that popular. He said, and right before it's time for you to get on that line, somebody jumps in front of you. What you going to do? And he said that kind of mentality is how you have folks within the Latino, within the Hispanic community, some of them, not all, but some of them who view immigration that way. So again, when you think about the economics, when you think about immigration, those two things are what I have found has influenced the Hispanic vote one way or the other.
And that, of course, superstar sportscaster Stephen A. Smith on The View not that long ago talking about this. And I want to go back to our guest. She's well-versed in this stuff, handled it for the Trump campaign before that, handled it for the Republican Party. Danielle Alvarez is with us. Danielle, when you hear Stephen A. Smith talk about the same stuff we're talking about, it seems like he's not as tone-deaf as the rest of the Democrats.
I actually love that you played that clip because I was going to say the one thing we didn't get to in the previous segment was immigration. I remember doing TV and going on CNN and fighting because they'd say, Hispanics do not support President Trump's agenda for the border. Absolutely we do. Absolutely we do. If you looked at the poll numbers, and of course it came true on election night and throughout, and if you continue to look at the poll numbers for President Trump's support, Hispanics absolutely, and minority communities, even the Black community, support President Trump's America First policies and making sure that we have a secure border. And by the way, you can look at it from many different ways. You can look at it exactly as Stephen A. Smith said. You're waiting in line to become a citizen of this country or waiting in line to come to this country, and someone enters illegally and just skips the line. But the second thing you also have to remember, and this is something that I always explain to folks, is if you are someone who is crossing the border, that's absolutely inhumane. We have seen the videos of young children being trafficked by cartel, by coyotes, and dropped over the border wall. We have seen and heard the horrific audio of, I can think of this one of a woman drowning in the Rio Grande. I actually spoke to a Hispanic reporter, and I won't name names, who said to me, I used to be on the beat in the southern counties of Texas, and I used to cover the border for a Spanish language outlet, who said, I'll never forget the smell of a dead body. Having an open border is inhumane. We know that there are hundreds of thousands of missing children who cross the border and were never rejoined with their families. Under the Biden administration, President Trump is looking for those children. The Department of Justice is looking for those children. The Department of Homeland Security as well. We know that fentanyl and illicit drugs pour over our open border. There is nothing good that comes from an open border. And so I think that is why President Trump had such huge support for closing our border, whether it was the Hispanic community, whether it was the Black community, whether it was any state across the country. Every state suddenly became a border state, and every state was dealing with these issues. And it was top of mind for everyone. I actually remember during the previous midterm cycle when I was beginning this work on the national level right after the 2020 election, so it was 2021, immigration was, barely broke the top 5 of issues top of mind for voters. By the time that President Trump was elected, it was issue either number 1 or number 2, depending on the voter that you talked to. It was the economy and it was immigration. And by the way, it absolutely resonated with Hispanic communities and with minority communities overall.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I have a Cuban friend, left Havana on a jet ski, made it to Key West probably 22 years ago. And he He came to the United States, he became a citizen and whatnot. And he's not a conservative. He's not a Trumper. He's actually like a Trump hater. He can't stand Trump. But when I would ask him, what do you think about immigration? He would tell me, oh, no. Esto está mal, bien mal. This is really bad. He hated the idea. He's like, everything I went through to get here. And he's like, now people are just paying a few grand to some smuggler to come right in. He's like, no, not good, no bueno. So I think that it's interesting. Even the people who don't like Trump agreed with him on that message.
I mean, it's not surprising at all. And I think that we spent so much time, listening to a certain reporter who no longer works for Univision, who said that immigration was viewed one way by Hispanics and convinced everyone that all Hispanics viewed immigration by this one way, right? Open borders and these really loose policies. And it comes to be the exact opposite. We want secure borders. We want a system that works for immigration. We want to make sure that, there was a time, I remember we would go to visit the border and you would talk to Customs and Border Patrol agents who said, we're completely overwhelmed. We cannot deal with this. We don't have the resources that we need. And of course, that spilled over everywhere. I remember talking to, the mom in California whose son died, from a fentanyl overdose. I remember, talking to the families of Lake and Riley who said, our daughter was brutally murdered. And you hear these stories and, it was more common than it should have been. These families shouldn't have gone through what they went through because we had an open border. And then immediately President Trump said, you can close it through executive action. The Democrats tried to say, you absolutely can't. It takes an act of Congress. It is a much more complex issue. Here we go. President Trump is, less than 100 days in. We have a secure border. We have a secure border and we have the resources that we need at the border to make sure that it is closed. We saw the incredible footage, those first two planes of Tren de Aragua members and MS-13 members and the worst criminals that we could gather, 2 plane rides out of this country. I actually had dinner with a friend who's a Democrat that said, my gosh, and Democrats and the ACLU was still suing to bring those 2 planes back of the worst terrorists and criminals who entered our country illegally, and Democrats were suing, saying, bring them back. And luckily, this administration said, nope, they're out of U.S. airspace, they're gone. But can you believe that that's what Democrats were fighting for? Bring those Tren de Aragua members, bring those MS-13 members back. Bring the worst
and really, out of spite,
back.
Right? Out of spite because they can't stand Trump.
Out of touch, out of spite. They have no idea what to do except for advocating for the exact opposite of what President Trump wants. And that's such a failure because President Trump is fighting on 80-20 issues that the 80% of Americans, and I'd venture to say more, support. And there they were. We saw, the videos and the images of those terrorists, of those gang members, of those drug traffickers, of those human smugglers. I mean, we saw them being deported, and there the Democrats were saying, absolutely not, this is outrageous. I mean, they're so out of touch. They have not figured out what to do and how to message against this administration, because the reality is it's so simple. I mean, it really is quite obvious. President Trump and his administration are delivering on every single campaign promise. I was actually meeting with a friend in the West Wing who said, Danielle, in the campaign, we really focused so hard on creating the blueprint so that there'd be no confusion on what we would do in the first 100 days, in the first 6 months. And I said, it is absolutely brilliant. And it's so shocking because most elected officials don't do that. And here President Trump is, very simple, very obvious, delivering on his campaign promises.
Outstanding. Like they say, promises made, promises kept. Danielle Alvarez was a senior advisor to the Trump campaign, overseeing Hispanic stuff, overseeing communications. She worked for the RNC as well. And Danielle, tell everybody how they can keep up to speed with everything that you're doing and what you're up to.
Oh, gosh, we have so many great channels. I would definitely encourage everyone to go check out the GOP Twitter account, RNC Research Twitter account. And then, of course, there are all of the incredible White House Twitter accounts. I'm a little slow, but I've got to pull it up. I believe they've started a brand new one. It's Rapid Response 47. Those are some great
Oh,
folks.
that one's good. I follow that one.
Rapid,
they put some good
incredible. The guys who run that account have been with the president all throughout the campaign. In fact, a lot of folks who are on the team have been with the president, from the first administration. There's a handful of them who have been there since 2015. So he's surrounded by good people. He has a great operation with him in the White House who are making sure, they wake up every day, Don, until, probably past midnight over there, making sure to accomplish the president's goals and making sure to serve the American people.
Folks, check her out, Danielle Alvarez. She's on Twitter at Danielle_Alva, and I appreciate you being here. Hopefully you'll come back and we can continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And amigos, we come back with your thoughts, your calls, reactions, and everything else. Open phones across America. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with you all, we the people, the American people, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Silver City, New Mexico, KNUW. And check in with Glenn. Glenn, go right ahead.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Valdez. A couple questions. First of all, and I'm not by any stretch apologizing or sanctioning their behavior, but we keep hearing the same 4 and 5 people who've been murdered in this country by folks who came across the border illegally. And you know the names, Lincoln Riley, the woman in Maryland.
Well, it's more than 4 or 5, but yeah, Laken Riley definitely, there was a whole bill named after her recently.
But again, a mere handful. What about the 30,000 people who were murdered in this country every year by people born here?
Yeah, well, I think the issue is, hold on, Glenn, well, it's real simple, because the conversation is about illegal immigration and crime associated with illegal immigration. So, for example, if we talk about houses that are burnt to the ground by arsonists, and someone were to call in and say, why aren't we talking about houses that are burnt to the ground by people who don't know how to cook? Or about people that, do stupid things in their houses and accidentally burn them down? Well, that's a whole different conversation. It's a different set of statistics. It's literally a different program. The conversation here is about the people who are not supposed to be doing this at all, right? So nobody should ever wake up and think, today I'm going to get killed, raped, beaten by an illegal alien. No one should have that expectation. Now, I don't think anybody should have the expectation that they're going to have those things done by some other person, right? By a citizen or a legal resident or whatever and what have you. But I do know that every day when I go out, I may not come back home. It could be the bus driver that runs me over. It could be lightning that strikes. It could be the legal person that you're talking about that is killing people. All of those things are possibilities, but the conversation right now is centered on closing the border so that we're not accepting transnational terrorists that we have euphemized in the media as gang members, and kind of making it simple, like, because I know you said, you made the preface or the caveat, I'm not trying to excuse their behavior. But if you're not trying to excuse their behavior, then what are you actually trying to do, right? You're trying to deflect the conversation from the conversation about the illegality, the criminality of these illegal immigrants to someone else, that you're saying these people are allowed to be here and they're still murderers and killers and whatever. And you may have a point there, but that's not the conversation that we're having.
Okay, I'll go with that for now. And one other thing I have to mention, the woman you just had on a few minutes ago, Danielle Alvarez,
yes.
She was going on about how people of color, blacks, Hispanics, etc. And I live in the desert Southwest, and I'm familiar with the Navajo Code Talkers. Are those people going to be supporting Trump in the next election when they realize, hey, he just erased your contributions to history?
What are you talking about?
Well, like the Navajo Code Talkers, where they took down all the information that was up in the Pentagon website, the DOD website, about people like that. Jackie Robinson, the Tuskegee Airmen, Navajo Code Talkers.
I see. Well, I read the article about the Tuskegee Airmen, and as I understood it, this was kind of misreported by the media. I have to hit a pause here, but I will definitely look into I'll bring up the article so that you guys can take a look at it as well, and I'll let you know where I found it. But yeah, I mean, the answer is there's a lot of people that are going to be pissed off by politicians, and I don't think that changes anything. Number one, Trump can't be reelected. Number two, you're not going to win everybody every time. You have to deal with simple majorities. And in here, we're talking about a simple electoral majority, right? The Electoral College and the thing that he won for the first time in 20 years, the popular vote. So I think that majority was enough to give him the White House, and now he's got it. So now we just have to sit back, relax, enjoy the show. If people don't like it, they can speak up and do what they've got to do during the midterms and then again in the next 4 years. But my gut tells me people are not going to be tired of an improved economy, especially one that's this damaged. Trump's doing, I think, a lot. There's a lot of investment pouring into our country that I haven't seen in a long time. And I just remember Obama saying, what's he going to do? Wave a magic wand and bring manufacturing back? Well, look at that. Manufacturing's coming back. They're building steel plants in the United States. The tariffs seem to be working. So I would not count my chickens until they hatch. Thanks for the call, Glenn. God bless you. Folks, we're coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, you're a true patriot and a Latino voice. We need more of you in America. And keep up your good work, Rich.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we return. And by the way, congratulations to our friends at Newsmax. Stock price went up 500% at their IPO debut today, then 700%, 667%. $300 million in funding, huge success. It's just put in NMAX in Google. You'll see all the headlines. Congrats to Chris Ruddy, and that was him just speaking right before I came on. And I want to go to the phones. Let's see what we got here. Let's go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBOI. Go for it, my man.
Thank you for taking my call, Rick.
Yes, sir. You betcha.
Can hear your voice.
Likewise, my man.
Little voice. Little bit of sanity in the course of a day that doesn't have much in it. I'm just so infuriated with the Dems. It's hard to explain.
Yeah. Paul, I'm going to put you on hold just because I'm getting a lot of echo from you, and I don't know if everybody else can hear you well, but we'll come back to you. And I think you're right, though. The Dems are in large part, I think they've lost touch with what's going on because they're so, I'm going to use the term, butthurt. They're butthurt over losing. They're butthurt over Americans thinking for themselves and actually saying, you know what? This isn't so bad, this Trump thing. You know what? It's not so bad closing the Department of Education. It's not so bad eliminating income tax like they just did in Mississippi. I mean, these are all great, great, great things. Anyway, amigos, we continue our late night national town hall conversation straight ahead in some markets, and in others, we're wrapping it up. So depending on where you are, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy to be here with you. We're live, we're national, and I want you to join our late night national town hall conversation. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. It's 7 minutes after 10 p.m. Eastern Time and 7 minutes past 7 p.m. West Coast Time. Of course, we are airing nationally. We can go into the Pacific Time Zone, all the way out there into Hawaii and everything. So I want to welcome everybody on the West Coast. Big shout out to our friends over in Oregon, our buddies at KGAL, great radio station. So big shout out to everybody who's tuning in from that neck of the woods. And I want to get into a number of things tonight because, well, there's a number of things to get into, right? We've got a lot of conversation coming up about what the status of America is, where we're at, what we the people are thinking. But you also have JD Vance and the trip to Greenland. What's going on with that? What is going on with Doge? Of course, continues to be in the news. There's also some news about El Trompito talking about a third term. And again, the way he does it, it's so good. You have to really look at how he does these things, right? And it's kind of like half of it is, let me give them something to chase, right? It's like the laser pointer with the cat. You know, you just, I don't know, put it on your ceiling fan, right? And that's him. When he throws these things out there, he's doing laser pointer to the cats and the folks in the media, or as he says, you guys back there in the fake news, you know, they go nuts chasing it down. Like, what do you mean a third term? You can't do that, blah, 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 right? And then, you know, to add insult to injury, he'll have a couple of people go out there. Well, technically, you know, if this were to happen and that were to happen, I don't know, we could, you know, you never know. You never know. And it just drives them absolutely nuts. But they don't realize these are smokescreens, right? And now the other half of that, or the other side of that same coin, I would say is, I don't know, maybe it does generate enough support for him to say, I don't know, FDR did it, maybe I can do it. But I don't think that's the case for Trump, for many reasons. I think I think Trump would love to leave office saying, well, you know, many people, the polls are out, that many people wanted me to run for a third term. But I said, look, there's many qualified people. I'll be here helping to build the party. I just want to live my life in Mar-a-Lago, right? And I think, listen, I don't blame him. I don't blame him for being slick. He does it so well, and keep doing it, sir. Keep doing it. So I love that. But we're going to keep talking. We're going to keep talking about a number of things here because in addition to the Vance trip to Greenland, in addition to El Trompito and the alleged third term, there's a lot of stuff going on. And it's it's a Monday. There's always a lot of things to talk about on a Monday, right? The World Health Organization now saying that they have no choice but to cut jobs after the defunding from the United States. Oh, my gosh. I remember Trump making a comment saying, I don't know, maybe we should just defund the UN. He didn't follow through on that. But, and I'm guessing because of a lot of pressure from people internally saying, are you kidding me? We have to have a UN. But good thing I don't work in the White House, or I'm not one of those advisors there, because I would have been like, I think you should not only cut the funding to the UN, I think we need to sue them to get the money back for the last 4 or 5 years retroactively, like right up to the pandemic. You know, maybe even before that too, right? You open the Overton window a little bit wider so that, you know, again, a little laser pointer on the ceiling fan for the cats, right? Tell them, yep, and we're going 10 years retroactive. So while one group is fighting that part, the other group's fighting the other part, and, you know, people are getting lost in the middle, and you could say, hey, look, it's really not such a bad idea. Look how good we're doing without a UN. We don't need a UN, or at least we don't need to be part of it. And if we're not part of it, we don't have to pay for it. But we created it way back when. Anyway, different story, different day. I get it. I'm cool with that. FBI Director Kash Patel has made an announcement after years of stonewalling. Guess what? The shooting at the 2017 congressional softball game will be looked at. And a lot of the information they've been trying to get will be revealed and released. Good. This is all good stuff. There's also rumors all over the place about, additional investigations into other things. And I think it's important to look at other things, right? People say, oh, we got to look at January 6th. It was an inside job. This and yes, we do. Look at everything. Look at everything, especially that doesn't have a statute of limitations. And you follow the crimes and the facts, right? This is not about saying, oh, it's time to get them back, a taste of their own medicine. They're like lawfare. It's none of that, because I think that's wrong. I really do. I think what's right is to do what's right. And more than anything, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, when you've got a sinking ship, you don't necessarily go after the person that poked the hole in the ship. Why? Because the ship might sink. You have to plug the hole. You plug the hole, you make sure it doesn't keep sinking. Then you can work on going after the guys who are sinking the ship. Right? Now, in this case, some of these people are very old. Now, I know over in conspiracy land, a lot of the folks that are off-season from the circus, otherwise clowns, they believe that, all the bad guys have been rounded up and arrested and executed, and the people that we see on TV are all actors and robots and androids and imposters and body doubles, and that all these people have done bad things, including certain former presidents and whatnot, that these people were all put down, so to speak. I wish I was that gullible. I wish I was that naive. And I wish that justice were so, I'm going to say opaque, right? But justice has to be transparent. You have to be able to see the justice. You can't say, oh, no, yeah, I heard they killed that guy. No, you've got to know what's going on. It's got to be publicized. People need to know. This is why there's such a thing as a perp walk, right? This is why you face your accusers in open court. This is why. It's very important for people to truly believe that justice is done. They've got to see it happening. And this is why I get on here and I catch a lot of heat. Friendly fire, right? From our side. People telling me, oh, come on. You looking out for the Democrats? No, I'm just saying, I'm going to make an example. Let's say I'm going to use the example of a cop, not because I don't like cops. I love cops. But because I think everybody will get this example. Let's say you've got a cop. It's on the highway and, brand new car, doesn't realize how fast he's going. Let's say the speed limit's 75. And he's doing 75, but before you knew it, he's doing 90. 95. Pretty easy to do, honestly. And gets pulled over. The cop pulls him over and says, hey, let me see your driver's license and registration. He says, oh, I'm so sorry, officer, sure. Goes to hand him his driver's license, and as he opens his wallet, he sees that there's a badge in there, and he says, oh, what's that? And he says, oh, you know what, I'm on the job, and NYPD, whatever. And the guy goes, oh, okay. And he says, well, you're doing 95. It's speed limit 70 or 75, whatever it is. Oh, man, yeah, I'm sorry. I just got this car. Literally, it's my third day having it. It's so quiet. It's so nice. It runs so smooth. I had no idea I was doing 95. I apologize. All right, listen, I'm letting you off with a warning. Take care. All right, super. Now, let's just say that went like that. That's how that goes in many ways, right? Because there's courtesy, there's collegiality, there's the guy that is driving the car at 95 that is a cop and understands how the system works and knows what to say and how to act, and he knows to do the right thing, right? And when you do all of those things together, you have less of a chance of getting in trouble. Well, guess what happens when you have a bunch of people that are in charge of making laws and policies, and then they turn around and violate laws and policies that oftentimes don't pertain to them because they're protected by the speech and debate clause of the United States Constitution and have some sort of qualified immunity because most of what they're doing falls within the purview of their job. So they can't get in trouble for it, a.k.a. members of Congress. So what happens then? Do we take away that immunity like the left wanted to do to the police and did in some cases, like New York City? Or do we chalk it up and say maybe we need to do a better job of watching who we give this type of authority to, because we've already seen what happens when you give it to the Adam Schiffs of the world, what they can do with it. Right? That's a question I'm not going to give you the answer to. But I will tell you that most Americans believe that America's headed in the right direction. And while most Americans would like to see, I don't know, half of Congress put in jail for treason and other things, the likelihood of that happening is not high, and it's not even very realistic. So I think we need to focus on the fights that we know we can win and make sure that these things never happen again. And that's not what I think we should do because I think that's what's right. That's what I think we should do because I think that's all we can do. If I'm wrong, I would love to be wrong. And hopefully the future will prove me being wrong. And I could eat these words and say, I'm glad I was wrong. But until then, we're going to talk about Trump's poll numbers. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Let's take a look at the percentage of the country who say that we're on the right track. It's actually a very high percentage when you compare it to some historical numbers. What are we talking about? According to Marist, 45% say that we're on the right track. That's the second highest that Marist has measured since 2009. How about NBC News? 44%. That's the highest since 2004. Wow. The bottom line is the percentage of Americans who say we're on the right track is through the roof. And if you were to compare it to when presidents have historically been reelected, of course, Trump is not constitutionally eligible to run for re-election, but I think it sort of puts it in perspective. 42% of the country says the country is on the right track when the incumbent party is re-elected. And also keep in mind, back when Kamala Harris lost and the Democrats were turned out of power, only about 27 to 28% of the country said the country is on the right track. The bottom line is right now, a much higher percentage of the country says we're on the right track.
That's Harry Enton from CNN not that long ago breaking down these numbers. And what's interesting about this is there's a number of polls out there, and I have trouble keeping track with them, but I look at the headlines that reference these things. And always very interesting to me what's going on with the polls. And I said, you know what? I need to find out exactly what's going on here because there was one that I saw here, and I thought it was very interesting. The latest one from the McLaughlin brothers, Jim and John McLaughlin, talking about Trump's success. And this came out just on Thursday, right? Just before we broke for the weekend. And, well, before I steal any thunder, let me bring in John McLaughlin himself to talk about this poll. John, welcome back, sir.
It's great to be back, Rich. And you can talk about the poll. It's good. It's like, you know.
Yeah, well, I got it here. I'll share some of the stuff that stuck out to me. Donald Trump's approval number is high right now. 52% approval, 43% disapproval. That's about 10 higher than a lot of other polls had it. So let's talk about this one because I think this is interesting.
Well, what I do is just to compare. Not all these polls are apples to apples. I mean,
sure.
You know, last year during the campaign, we were polling likely voters, and we always had Trump up 2 over Biden and Harris in the national popular vote, and that's what he won by. And we had him sweeping the battleground states, which is what he did. But we polled likely voters. We don't poll registered voters. We don't poll adults. So we're not diluting the sample. We're polling people that are actually going to vote. So it represents the 156 million people that actually voted in the presidential race. So now we're polling them for if they're likely to vote in the midterm elections, which will be a somewhat smaller group, but it'll be still significant. And we had 52%. And we also ask if you like President Trump personally and his policies, and they approve of that, and we had if they like both, he has a 38% they like his personality and his policies. If you like his policies, because some people like his policies, don't like his personality as much, there's another 14%, so it goes up to 52%. And then if you dislike both, it's 43%. But if that's the way, during the campaign, we moved his job approval up, especially in comparison to the job that Biden and Harris did. And then it also brought up his favorable rating. And that also brought up his popular vote. It brought up it helped the Republicans both win the Senate and keep control of the House. And in the same poll, we have the Republicans leading for the generic ballot for Congress, 47-43. It's not over 50. And probably the most important number, we ask among the four things that President Trump said he was going to do, increasing oil and gas production, 7% of all voters say that's the most important. Strengthening national defense, 8% say that's the most important. Another 20% say securing the border, reforming immigration. But 58%, a total of 58%, want him to cut taxes to provide relief to working middle-class voters. And what's going on in Washington, you're right, because right now in Washington, the Senate's supposed to come out with a budget deal or their framework for the budget and the tax cuts on Wednesday. And the Democrats, we got to remember, too, the Democrats, the House already voted on it, and every Democrat in the House voted against the making the Trump tax cuts permanent. And let me tell you why this is important. We did a poll last month for the Chamber of Commerce. 49% of all voters are not aware that the Trump tax cuts that were passed back in 2017 lapse. So when they lapse, you'll have the highest tax increase in history. 91% of all voters, the taxes will go up. You'll have, for the average household, average taxpayer, $2,000 a year tax increase. Because all the tax cuts that Trump passed in 2017 were scheduled because of budget, the way Washington does budgets, to lapse this year.
Well, John McLaughlin, I just want to say, the left is already painting this picture. I looked at the Drudge Report earlier today, and that's exactly what it said. It said Trump is on track for the largest tax increase in American history. And they're already trying to attach this to him, so we can expect that they're trying to mobilize every Democrat in Congress to make sure that they don't renew the Trump tax cuts so that he is on the hook for this. At least that's how they're going to paint it.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, that same Chamber of Commerce poll that we did, national poll in February, 60-40, all voters supporting the Trump tax cuts, making them permanent. And when we asked them, Republicans supported 81-7, Democrats supported 53-31, and Independents supported 55-25. And when they hear the negative consequences of what would happen if it doesn't pass, it's overwhelming. I mean, 80% of the voters are more likely to support making the Trump tax cuts permanent when they know that it'll trigger the largest tax increase in history and raising taxes on the average American by $2,000 a year. 80%.
Well, I was going to say, what really would stink for Democrats is if they did do this, then guess what? This would be worse than any government shutdown. And Schumer was afraid to even pull that off. So I think Trump's going to get his way on this. But, John, you can finish that thought on the other side of this break. We're going to come right back with John McLaughlin from McLaughlin, the polling group. You know them, McLaughlin Associates, and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our late night national town hall conversation with John McLaughlin from McLaughlin Associates. He's a pollster. He's been a pollster for Bibi Netanyahu, for President Trump, and many other people. He's fantastic at this, and he seems to call him right pretty often. His guy typically wins. John McLaughlin, we left off with you saying the implications, or stating the implications of what it would look like if the Trump tax cuts are not, reenacted. And again, they're scheduled to expire. Stuff that he put into play in 2017, and we left off with you telling us how badly that would be for Democrats. Go right ahead.
Well, it would be bad. It'd be bad for the country. But
absolutely.
But the thing that's bad politically right now is, I mean, President Trump, to his credit, is doing so much. Whether it's trying to, keep peace in the Middle East, or stop the war in Ukraine and Russia, whether it's securing the border and immigration, he's having great success there. But the economy is the top issue, particularly when you go into the midterm elections. And since half the country or more isn't aware that the Trump tax cuts lapse this year, they literally lapse, where you'll have automatic tax increases if Congress doesn't act to make them permanent. You've got 80% of the voters are more likely to support the Trump tax cuts, knowing that taxes will go up by $4.5 trillion, and it's going to affect like 25 million businesses. 79% are more likely to know that the tax rate for job creators, the top bracket will go up to 43%. And the tax increase it's equal to the average of 9 weeks of groceries. Now, basically, the government's going to take that much money to you, right? After 4 years of inflation, we can't take a tax increase, and nobody's talking about this. Every Democrat in the House has already voted against this, so they've already voted for the largest tax increase in history, and we've let them off the hook. The Republicans, tomorrow, there's two special elections in Florida, Florida 1 and Florida 6. Those should be referendums on Democrats who are against the Trump tax cuts being made permanent and for the largest tax increase in the history of America versus Republicans who want to cut taxes. And then you've got even there's a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. The judge for the Democrats, Crawford, could rule to change redistricting. She does that, the Democrats could pick up 2 more seats in Congress. Republicans would lose 2 seats. Then you got 2 votes for more taxes versus 2 votes for, tax cuts. And Trump's tax cuts, whether they're, the tax cut where you'd have an overtime, 66% of all Americans support it. Where there's no tax on tips, 71% of all Americans support it. 82% support no tax on Social Security. These are pro-growth, working-class tax cuts. And the Democrats, quietly are doing everything they can to see them defeated. And the Republicans need to make them the central issue of every campaign this year and need to hold the Democrats accountable right now. We really should be out there. There's 13 Democrats who are elected in the districts where Trump won. Whether it's Jared Golden in Maine or Josh Gottheimer in New Jersey or
I live in that district, Gottheimer's district. Used to be Scott Garrett's district.
They voted for the largest tax increase in the history, and nobody's laying a glove on them. We've got to tell voters this so that they understand what's coming on, because Congress, the Senate's going to propose a budget or some sort of budget framework where they've got to have the tax cuts in there. Because if we don't make it permanent, that's what's going on with, everybody's talking about different issues with the market going up or down. It's really about the uncertainty about, they don't know if taxes are going to go up or down. So if you're running a business and you're trying to plan, like we do polling for the Job Creators Network of small business owners and employers in America, we do it every other month. And the vast majority of small business owners tell us that they will stop expansion, that they will reduce the number of employees, that they'll cut back on wages and cut back on salaries for employees. You've got 3/4 of these small business owners saying if the tax cuts aren't made permanent, they're gonna do bad things that are gonna make it worse. And our friends like Steve Forbes says it won't be just a recession; it'll be a depression. So you've got economists like Forbes and Art Laffer and others and Larry Kudlow saying we've got to pass this, and the Republicans need to get a lot more vocal, and they need to make this a central political issue of the year, where Democrats are for the largest tax increase in history, and Republicans are for making the Trump tax cuts permanent.
John McLaughlin, really, really well put. Now, I want to know, is there any polling behind the, I don't want to say the desire, but I guess, the desire or the opposition to Trump running a third term?
I haven't. By the way, I haven't seen any numbers on that yet. But it's like. Well, by the way, if the economy's moving, some people have speculated that we may have won the 2020 race, so we might have already won 3 elections in a row. But we won 2016 with an electoral majority. 2020 was 44,000 votes across 3 states that have 160 million votes, and there was a lot of
questions.
Ballot harvesting that went on, right? So 2024, there was no doubt. I mean, 2024, we won decisively, swept the battleground states, won the popular vote, national popular vote, and we broadened the Republican coalition where there was basically a voter who voted for Biden in 2020 who switched to Trump, and a quarter of them were Hispanic, a quarter of them were Black, and their average age was 35. So the Republicans broadened their country club coalition to become a working class party. We got 46% of the Hispanic vote. We got 21% of African American men. We increased margins among younger voters, particularly voters under 30 who, they were coming out of high school and college and they couldn't find good jobs, good paying jobs, couldn't afford cars, couldn't afford mortgages. I mean, they basically are looking to us to basically hold down inflation, get the economy to grow again so that they can be a part of the American dream. And that's what the Republicans need to focus on right now.
Outstanding. John McLaughlin from McLaughlin Associates, pollster to President Trump. I want to thank you for breaking things down for us. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm hopeful to speak with you again really, really soon. Godspeed, sir.
Thanks, Rich. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
You bet. Same here. And amigos, we come back with your thoughts, your calls, reactions, and so much more. Open phones across America with me, Rich Valdez, right after this.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation, and my question for you, should El Trompito run for a third term? I want to hear from you about this. Can he do it? Is he allowed to do it? Do you want him to do it? Even if he couldn't do it, should he try to get the Constitution amended? Does he need to get the Constitution amended? I want to hear from you, all the American people. 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. Now, earlier today, Caroline Leavitt was asked about this, and she, just said, look, we're working on what we're working on. But then they asked the man himself, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States. And they said, sir, are you going to run for a third term? Do you think it's okay to talk about that? And his response aboard Air Force One, so it's a little loud, but not too muffled, was brilliant.
You said you were not joking about a third term, about possibly wanting a third term. Does that mean you're not planning to leave office on January 20th?
I'm not looking at that, but I'll tell you, I have had more people ask me to have a third term, which is in a way a fourth term, because the other election, the 2020 election was totally rigged. So it's sort of a fourth term in a certain way. I just don't want the credit for the second, because Biden was so bad. He did such a bad job. And I'm just telling you, I have had more people say, please run again. They said, we have a long way to go before we even think about that. But I've had a lot of people. Yeah, go ahead. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do you think that's an appropriate precedent to set, even if it wasn't you in this position, to see a president serve a third term?
I don't want to talk about a third term now because how you look at it, we got a long time to go. We have a long time. You know, we have almost 4 years to go. And that's a long time. But despite that, so many people are saying, you've got to run again. They love the job we're doing. Most importantly, they love the job we're doing.
Again, he gives them all the fodder they need and says, look, I'm not talking about that. You're talking about that. Come on. We're doing a great job. People want it, though. I mean, if we're talking about it, people really are asking. I want to know your thoughts on this. Should Donaldus Magnus run for a third term? 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Baxter Springs, Kansas. And we're going to connect with our friend Marcia. Marcia's on KZRG. Marcia, go right ahead. What do you think about Trump in a third term? Yes or no?
Why not?
Yeah.
If everybody votes for him, he'd be voted in again. It wouldn't be his choice. It would be ours.
Yeah. Well, I think there's questions about the would he be allowed to do it constitutionally? But it sounds like you're saying, look, if he's allowed to do it, I'm all for it.
Who said that the Constitution couldn't have an amendment?
Yeah, that too. Right. It definitely can. You just need that 2/3 majority. Now, I want you to tell me, what are your thoughts about President Trump? We were just talking with his pollster, John McLaughlin, about his poll numbers, and a lot of people seem to think Trump is doing a good job, or more people think he's doing a good job now than he did last time. What do you think, Marcia?
I think that he's doing fantastic, and I think that he's doing the best for us that can be done. If our taxes go up $2,000 a year, I'm sure that he'll have something in the offing to subsidize something so that they would go down.
Yeah, I get you. Well, Marcia, thank you. Thanks for the call, and thanks for your thoughts on this. And now we know El Trompito has yet another supporter for that potential third or fourth, as he put it, term. Marcia in Baxter Springs, Kansas, KZRG, thank you so much. Let us continue. We're going to go back to our buddy Paul, who we put on hold before because we couldn't hear him well. Paul, what are your thoughts? Should El Trompito run for a third term, yes or no?
Well, let me say that I was going to call in about some being angry at the Dems, but now that you posed this question...
Well, you could do both. Just answer my question first.
Okay. I would say yes after the tax cuts are passed and the Dems are beaten in the third term or the midterm, and go from there. I think it's completely possible if he wants to go through it. The only thing that I had a question of would be his age. He seems to be in quite cognitive health and physical health. He plays golf. If you play golf, you have to be able to move around, and I'm happy to see him do that. He's doing a bang-up job with Doge. My only question was, I was wondering if there was a Democrat on the Doge on the Doge list. The only reason why I ask is so that the Dems can't say, you didn't even put a Dem on Doge for us.
I see. You're saying as part of the department. I wouldn't know. I would imagine no, because then you wouldn't get anything done, right? They would do what Democrats do. But, Paul, thank you, brother. I appreciate your insight. I got to take this pause right here. We're coming right back with the rest of your calls and a couple of more clips that I've got and a whole other hour of a very interesting conversation. What is happening with Greenland? So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And there's a senator out there. His name, Chris Coons. You've seen him. He's kind of funny looking. He was on CNBC just on Friday. And he was, for the first time, making a little bit of sense, saying, look, I didn't want them to fire General Milley over his conversations telling the Chinese, hey, we would let you know if we're going to war. The same way he's not going to ask for anybody to be fired over here. However, he's very concerned. Listen to this.
You have asked for Lloyd Austin's resignation from that, or?
I don't know whether Lloyd Austin's the person who should have been held accountable for it, but there should have been accountability.
When General Milley said he would tell China if we were ever going to launch an attack.
Because he was so concerned about signals that the Chinese believed we were about to. So,
would you don't have a problem with him giving them a heads up and telling the Chinese leaders, you'll hear from me if anything's planned?
I think you're mischaracterizing that exchange.
That's pretty close.
Well, I think it's a whataboutism. I mean, I think we can all look at the signal.
The point is that you're going to complain about a splinter in one eye and ignore a 2x4 in the other eye.
I don't think Joe, the career of any military officer would not survive what just happened.
How about this? What about
and it shows a blindness to concerns about informational and operational.
How about Mayorkas? You let him stay for 4 years as 10 million people came across the border. Should you have asked for his resignation?
Look, what you're trying to change the subject from is what just happened in the Trump administration. That is a willful and demonstrable lack of accountability for violating basic requirements for confidentiality.
Are you calling for either Waltz or Hegseth to resign?
Yes.
You're calling for both of them to resign? I have. But not Lloyd Austin?
Lloyd Austin is not the Secretary of Defense.
You didn't back that. Okay. I think that's the splinter 2x4.
So I misread the transcript. I was giving him credit, and I should not have, because he's still a pendejo. And again, this is another one of those situations where he wasn't going to go after Austin. He wasn't going to go after, what's his name, the former Blinken, and the other guy, Sullivan. These guys were all out there doing all sorts of things that they shouldn't be doing, and that were really detrimental, right? Like allowing Iran to get a nuclear weapon and telling all sorts of things that they shouldn't be telling. Yet they want to throw the book at Pete Hegseth. They want to throw the book at Walz. They want to throw the book at somebody else. And like I said, I'm pretty sure at some point, somewhere, and it may have happened already, somebody's head's going to roll for this. And we may not know about it, right? But it's just, it's the way Trump rolls. He's one of those guys. If you ever watch him on The Apprentice, nobody got away with anything. He fired all his friends. He'd say, listen, so-and-so, I really like you. You do a great job. You're amazing. You're terrific. And you're fired. And he would let him know, because in this, in this instance, you dropped the ball, or, you shouldn't have been the project manager on that task, or whatever the case was. Trump's very, very, very fair in that sense, I would say. He knows how to call them like few I've ever seen call them. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you need to watch a few seasons of The Apprentice to understand what I'm saying. Anyway, I want to continue. And some of the things I want to get into, we have a lot to discuss, really, a lot to unpack here. What is the big deal with Greenland? Well, Vance got his trip there, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what's happening with Marine Le Pen. Apparently, she's been banned. She can't even run for president in France anymore. These free speech stiflers have been unearthed, and they're rearing their ugly heads. Anyway, all that, and of course, your thoughts, calls, and opinions. Open phones across America. Keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez coming right back. Another hour right now. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you live and national. It's a real blessing. It's about 7 minutes after 11 p.m. East Coast time, New York time, and about, let's see, that's 7 minutes after 8 p.m. if you're on the West Coast, like our friends at KGAL and others out there. We have a lot of affiliates on the West Coast, and I'm grateful for each and every one of them. I just had some interaction today with KGAL, and that's why they're top of mind. But looking forward to speaking with callers from all of those, and we will shout them out as well. And lots of big news today. There's a bunch of articles out there. I'm going to share some of them with you with respect to Newsmax. Now, many of you who watch Newsmax, you see me on there. I'm on there once a week doing commentary. But you may or may not know by now that they had been raising money, and let me just give you some of these headlines right here. How about this one? Media giant Newsmax launches on New York Stock Exchange, and there's a story that says they go inside the $300 million funding success. That's Stock Titan. Then you got Bloomberg.com, cable news firm. Well, actually, let me go to this one first. Newsmax price stock pops 500% on New York Stock Exchange as the conservative media network IPOs in the Trump era. I don't remember anybody blowing it up when Biden was president. Let's see what else we got here. Here's this one. Cable news firm Newsmax, where'd it go? Soars 667% in wild debut after IPO. How about one more? Two more. These are just at the top of the news feed here. Conservative channel Newsmax surges more than 700% in stock market debut. And I'll give you another one right here. Newsmax soars 723% on first day of trading. They want to call it volatile. So, seems like it's doing pretty good to me. Kudos to Chris Ruddy and everybody at Newsmax, the Newsmax team. Godspeed to you. I'm glad it worked out really well and continued success. But this is just one more in the line, right? We've seen a lot of people do well, right? We saw Rumble, right? Rumble did their IPO, I believe, earlier last year. Maybe it was last year already. We saw TMTG launch with the ticker symbol DJT, the Trump Media Technology Group. I think he made $4 billion at the end of that IPO. So it seems to me that unabashed conservative media outlets, people who are not afraid to take a conservative position and say, look, here's the news. Here's my opinion of the news. Let me know what you think. These types of organizations, in many ways like this show, seem to be growing. People like this type of information. Who would have thunk it? Oh, I think a lot of people, at least in talk radio, people have been thinking it for a long time. The reality here is that people are tired of being led astray by one-sided news. And those that are arguing with me right now in their car, in their job, wherever they are, in their house, and they're like, oh, come on, Valdez, blow it out your blowhole, sir. You're full of it. Well, no, I'm not full of it, because the thing is, forever and a day, CNN had the market cornered. Then came Fox News to become the ratings titan. But Fox News is, more conservative leaning. But, it's not a conservative bastion, right? There's a lot of middle of the road Republicans on there. And that's okay, right? I think you should have all sorts of views presented. It's truly my opinion. And you would hear from more Democrats, like whenever I can get the Democrat from Chicago to come on, Alderman Raymond Lopez. He's great. He's terrific. We don't always agree, but he gives me his side of the story. I give him mine. We have the conversation. It's that they're not typically willing to get into a conversation because conversations or discussions about facts are really not what they want to do most times. If that were the case, Congresswoman AOC All Out Crazy would have joined me when I invited her on the radio 6-7 years ago in New York City, in her district, at the biggest radio station in the city for talk radio. No, she didn't want to do it. She didn't want to talk to me. In fact, she ran away, literally, like she jogged away from me to the other side of the street to avoid talking to me. It was quite the thing. And that was why the New York Post reported on that. I mean, you could find that out for yourself. But ultimately, conservative media has a place in our ecosystem here, right? There are people here that consume this content, that distribute the content, that share the content. It's a world. It's an actual world. People like this stuff. Let's look at Truth Social. They're doing so well that they decided to open up a fintech company, financial technology. I think it's called Truth Financial. They're going to debut that soon. Lots of very interesting developments in this space. People are making a lot of money. It just goes to show you, people are thirsty for the truth. People want to know what's going on. People are tired of being maligned like this poor woman, Marine Le Pen. Marine Le Pen ran for president in France, for prime minister. And it was difficult for her. She faced a lot of opposition. But it didn't work out. Why? She is the populist candidate, right? She's the France first, if you will, type of candidate. She's a French lawyer. And she ran for president in 2012, in 2017, and in 2022. And now the latest is she's been banned from running for the French presidency. They're saying this has to do with a ruling that mentions her related to ruling on embezzlement. And I would say this sounds like lawfare, just from my perspective. Right? This is what they said Trump did, right? Trump, he inflated his properties. He did this, that, and the third. He's guilty as charged. Well, now they're saying she's guilty of embezzlement. And they're banning her from running in the next election. Ain't that something? Now, listen, I'm not an expert on French law, so I can't sit here and tell you that I know with any degree of certitude that she has a right to run. I don't know their rules. But I do know some lawfare when I smell it, and I think I smell it here. Because, here we go, this woman that's run perennially, and she seems to be doing better and better. And overall, Europe in general. When I was in Europe last year for CPAC in Budapest, I told you, the American conservative movement that they see in CPAC in the conference, they love this movement. They love what's happening. And at the last CPAC, I bumped into some European guys, and they were talking about how they need to make Europe great again. They love the idea of keeping Europe first. And these are some of the things that they're trying to champion in that area. So it seems like conservatives are making a comeback. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. Your thoughts, your calls, your reactions, we're going to be taking those all night. Open Phones Across America is officially on. We do have a guest coming up in a little bit. We're scheduled to speak with Ambassador Carla Sands, ambassador to Denmark and Greenland. And I'm really interested in hearing from her and getting some of her thoughts about Vice President JD Vance and Usha Vance's, the second lady, visit to Greenland, as well as the potential for what happens diplomatically moving forward. As a former diplomat, I'm really looking forward to hearing her perspective. But we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to keep talking about this situation with Marine Le Pen because, again, this is what they were trying to do to El Trumpito. So anyway, we will continue the conversation straight ahead. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Second Lady was booked to travel. Her husband joined her at short notice, but Greenland gave America's Vice President the cold shoulder.
How we doing? It's cold as here. Nobody told me.
A visit to troops stationed here was the only engagement for a second-in-command on manoeuvres.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Sending a clear signal to the country that retains sovereignty of the world's largest island.
Our message to Denmark is very simple. You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland. You have underinvested in the people of Greenland, and you have underinvested in the security architecture of this incredible, beautiful landmass filled with incredible people.
Now, that is Vice President JD Vance with some words that were a little sharp, and they weren't very happy. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen said, hold up a second. Listen to this.
I have a message for our American friends and all others who are listening. Much is being said these days. Many accusations and many allegations have been made. And of course, we are open to criticism. But let me be completely honest. We do not appreciate the tone in which it's being delivered. This is not how you speak to your close allies.
This is not how you speak to your close allies. A scolding coming from the Danes. I want to bring in somebody who's a pro, who knows exactly what's going on, because she was ambassador to Denmark and Greenland. Ambassador Carla Sands is now vice chair of the Center for Energy and Environment at the America First Policy Institute. Ambassador Carla Sands, welcome.
Thank you, Rich. It's great to talk to you and your listeners.
Thank you. Likewise, we really appreciate it. And all I've got is this BBC report and some clips of J.D. Vance, who I think is stellar, and Minister Løkke Rasmussen, who's pretty ticked off. And I want to know, what are your thoughts on what's going on? Is this posturing? I mean, it seems like are they playing coy? Do they want to do more business with the United States, or are they just absolutely reticent to letting go of Greenland?
Well, I think that Denmark's making a very calculated, it's a bad error. They've really not thought this through well. They should have been immediately on the phone or on an airplane to talk to President Trump and make a deal. Because Lars Løkke Rasmussen, he was a former prime minister of Denmark, who's now a foreign minister of Denmark. And the current prime minister has been saying very sharp rhetoric toward President Trump, when President Trump and the rest of the world knows that Denmark can't afford to, quote unquote, own Greenland. They don't really. Greenland is semi-autonomous. But the people of Greenland have said they're going independent. So they're not going to be part of Denmark forever, and probably not. I thought it was going to be 30 years off, probably not for 10 years. They're not going to, within 10 years, probably a lot less. They're going to be away from Denmark, not part of Denmark. And Denmark can't afford to develop Greenland. They haven't bothered to do it. They can't afford to defend Greenland. They just don't have the capacity. It'd be like asking New Jersey to defend Greenland. And so Denmark is basically, it's like they own an asset that they can't afford and that you have to sell. Well, that's the situation we're in. President Trump's going to make sure that Greenland is secure on the American people's behalf, but also the rest of the world's behalf. Europe needs Greenland to be secure and not fall into the hands of Russia or China.
Now, do you think, and again, I'm just asking this, I feel like I'm asking it again, but because for my own ignorance of this, that what you said makes all the sense in the world to me. But I want to make sure I'm not being a presumptuous, imperialist American, as the Europeans would make me out to be, and say, is there a real opposition to playing ball with the United States, saying, we don't want to give up. We're a sovereign country. We don't want to get rid of this piece of land. Figure out how you're going to secure your country and everything else around here somewhere else, because we're not interested. I agree with you. It sounds like a very poorly calculated response, but that's what I'm hearing.
Right. Well, the America First approach that President Trump uses every day uses common sense and looks at the world as it is, not how he wishes it was. Well, Denmark is kind of living in the past. They're not even facing the fact that Greenland's going independent. They're trying to pretend that it's not happening. It's happening. And if it's happening, who's going to secure Greenland? They don't even have a military. There's 57,000 people on a landmass that's 1/3 the size of the continental U.S. And the part that's not covered by ice is as big as the state of California. This is gigantic, the biggest island in the world. It's part of North America. It's not part of Europe. It's part of North America. And the Danes, they've been longtime NATO allies, but they haven't been good NATO allies. They haven't paid their fair share, and they haven't taken care of Greenland. They've just let it kind of just sit up there, not develop it. There's not even a road between two towns in Greenland. That's how little infrastructure there is. And most of the infrastructure was built when the U.S. occupied Greenland during World War II until the end of the Cold War. We built the ports, we built the airports, except for a few that were just built in the last 2 years. It was all built by the United States. And we've had a great relationship with Greenland. I was able, with the support of the Trump administration, to put a consulate in Greenland, to get a Coast Guard billet for Arctic security. That's not enough. We need so much more. And President Trump's bringing Greenland into the fold, whether they're independent or not, they can be an independent country and be part of our security and trade cooperation. There's ways to do that, like a COFA. It's like a free association agreement, which Palau and Micronesia have. And that would give American companies the confidence to go invest in Greenland, but we could also secure them with our military strength.
Folks, we're on with former Ambassador Carla Sands, ambassador to Greenland and Denmark. And Madam Ambassador, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And if you were still in this role, what would your advice to the Prime Minister and to the Foreign Minister be at this point?
Well, we're going to have another great ambassador from the United States go to Denmark and work with the entire kingdom, and that's Greenland and the Faroe Islands as well as Denmark. But Denmark's really upset with us. So I think there's not going to be a good path until they get their head, the leadership get their head and the people around the fact that Greenland's leaving. So I think that is it's a crisis for them, because having a country like Greenland that's in the Arctic, part of the Kingdom of Denmark, makes them a player. It makes them an Arctic nation. It makes them big. Without Greenland, it's just Denmark, which is like New Jersey, and then the Faroe Islands, which are like the Scottish Shetland Islands. I mean, it's nice, and they can afford each other, which they can't afford Greenland. But they're not a player anymore. And I think it's a point of pride. And I mean, frankly, I sympathize with them. It's not easy to lose something you love, right?
Yeah, it's like they're losing their identity. Folks, Ambassador Carla Sands, ma'am, I want to thank you for being with us. Godspeed to you, and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Rich. Great to be with you.
Likewise. Talk to you again real soon. God bless. Amigos, we come back. Your thoughts, calls, and reactions. Do we get Greenland or not? Coming up next with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Congratulations, indeed. What an incredible moment.
This is amazing. You know, I'm looking at the stock price. We've got a live feed here. It's up over $14. It was as high as $15. So that's a 40% increase in the stock price just in 2 minutes. I mean, this is pretty significant. You know, again, it really, to me, how the price is not so important as to what the company does and what our results are. And everybody's very, very, I think, focused on that in the company. And it's a really good sign. So it's exciting.
That, of course, is the CEO of Newsmax.com that had their IPO today. And that's Chris Ruddy talking about the Newsmax stock price just minutes after the bell rang and it hit the market. It had gone up that much. The stock closed at somewhere 50, 60, 70 bucks or something like that. More than a 723% increase from its inception. So kudos again to Chris Ruddy and the Newsmax team. And honestly, this is, I'd say, a win for every conservative in America. It goes to show you, yeah. I remember somebody asking me about a week ago. They said, hey, do you think Newsmax is a viable competitor in the cable news space? And I said, well, are you kidding? I think Newsmax has been top 5 for the last year and a half, 2 years, easy, maybe even more. I might be selling them short there, probably since 2020. They've been rocking it in that top 5 spot, and quickly chomping at the bit, moving up. So again, kudos to the Newsmax team. Really, really proud of all of them. Really good people there that work really hard and really well. And that's good for America, right? Shows you there's investment in America. They raised $300 million. People are buying the stock like crazy. Why are people buying stock? Because they got money to buy stock. Why do they got money? Because they believe in this country. And I believe we're going to see more investment, more people spending money, more of all of that fun stuff for the rest of the Trump administration. I really do believe that, because that's what we saw last time. People loosened up their wallets a little bit. People took more trips, the end user and the folks that were hiring people, the big companies, they started hiring people. And that's what it's all about. You keep this economy moving and growing. It's an engine. It's got to keep firing on all cylinders and keep taxes low or non-existent. And you know who did that? The state of Mississippi. Today, the state of Mississippi, Governor Tate Reeves announcing no more income tax in Mississippi. Check it out.
We can all stand together and say that we have accomplished income tax elimination in the state of Mississippi. Let me say that again. Mississippi will no longer tax the work, the earnings, or the ambition of its people. Now, I want to be clear. This didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen alone. This day is the result of years of work by dedicated leaders who shared the vision and had the courage to act.
The courage to act. And you know what? That's right. He's talking about the political will, the courage to act. Very difficult to stand up to the government class. And you hear me talk about this a lot, but there is an entire class of people that maybe agree with you sometimes, but when you tell them, hey, if we shrink the size of government, then we have to fire people that work in the government. They got to find jobs somewhere else, maybe in the private sector. This little gravy train's over. People may lose their jobs. I think they're dropping, 10,000 jobs at the Department of Health and Human Services, or maybe 1,000. I might be twisting that number. But the point was a significant number of jobs. And people were freaking out. Oh, my God, what's going to happen to the state of health care in America? Well, who says that those people are doing anything towards the state of health care in America? How do we know that they're not the same people that are busy losing track of the kids that are in their custody, right? 300 and some odd thousand children that came across the border that are supposed to be in the custody of the United States Department of Health and Human Services. And every time they say, oh, you got to come in for a checkup, to find out your court date, whatever it is, they don't show up. They're MIA. What's up with that? Now, yeah, of course, you've got the current administration working on tracking them down and finding them and making sure that this is just an administrative oversight, not that these kids have been sold into slavery or worse. But the reality is, I'm sure that's happened. And that's sad. Nobody should allow that, right? I don't think any of us should think that that's okay. But yet people want to talk about that. And right away, the people that want to argue with you politically go, no, come on, No, listen, I understand. I understand all of the implications of these points, right? We don't know that these kids are in harm's way or not, but we certainly know that they're not showing up for their appointments with HHS or with court or with anything else. And that's who has custody of these children. And them hiring these groups to go bring them to alleged family members or other custodians is questionable. This is someone's child. Now they're going to turn around and say, well, they shouldn't have let him come here as an unaccompanied minor. Listen, I get it. I agree. They should not have let him, but they're here. And now what do? You got to do the right thing. And there too much of that hasn't happened in the last administration. And there's a lot of catching up to do. So anyway, very grateful for the news about Newsmax, very grateful for the news about Mississippi as well, joining Tennessee, Florida, Texas in not having any income tax. I think that's great. I'm hoping that happens in more states. Imagine if more states, even if it was just the red states, if more red states just said, hey, you know what, I want to make headlines too, and I want to be down with this. I'm good. Let me join the club. That would be fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So I don't know, maybe we could start a movement here. No more tax. And then you got Trump saying we're going to use the Department of External Revenue, maybe eliminate the Department of Internal Revenue. I would love that. I think it would be great. Call me selfish, but I could care less if the government gets a piece of the pie. I really can. Let me deal with that. Let it hit me in the face later when the neighborhood doesn't have a school, when the roads are totally broken, when the sewers don't work. Then say, Mr. No Taxes, how do you like it now? You know what? Give me 5 years off. I'll come back. I'll come back at like 0.25%, a quarter of the percentage I'm at now, whatever it is, any one of us, right? Cut it in half, cut it in a quarter. All right. But give me 5 years off at zero. That would be nice, right? Just imagine that for the next 5 years, not paying the federal government any tax. Imagine not paying the state government no income tax. Income tax, I'm talking, right? Because you're going to pay taxes anyway. You're consuming things, you're paying taxes. You got property taxes. There's all sorts of taxes. No need to tax your income on top of it. That should be a sin. That should be the 11th commandment. I know that might be sacrilege. I'm sorry. But I really believe that. It's going in my prayers for sure. Folks, keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And before we get to the calls, I'm going to get to your calls, 833-4VALDEZ, talking about everything that we discussed tonight. I also want to get your thoughts on this. Elon Musk is making all the headlines because he had this big meeting, right? And he was there with a town hall that he did last night with, I don't know, they looked at 1 million checks, and they were with a bunch of Wisconsin voters. And here's what he found. Listen to this.
Antonio's helping out with the Social Security. So just trying to review Social Security, where you may have heard that we found 20 million dead people marked as alive in the Social Security database. This is so crazy. And then you'll notice there's a strange trend here where how many Social Security numbers were issued?
We started at the top of the system, mapping the whole system of Social Security to understand where all the fraud was. And there's a lot of great people there that showed us really a lot of waste. And so that came up with a big list of stuff they're working on. You've heard some of that already. But this is what jumped out at us. When we saw these numbers, we were like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
Yeah, this is a mind-blowing chart.
Yeah, just this literally blew us away. Like, we went there to find fraud, and we found this by accident. And this isn't political, by the way. My parents are immigrants. Yeah, this country's been great to us. My brother and sister all born in Spain. I'm pro-legal immigration. This is not political. This is not political.
Not political. Listen, I agree with the guy. I'm also pro-legal immigration. I think we need it. And by the way, Trump made a bunch of money for the country, right? He doesn't get to keep this money. This is a quick aside. Let me see if I can find that real quick. The gold card. Remember the gold card? The green card that's now a gold card? Let me see if I can give you the exact number. At $5 million each, 1,000 gold card visas have been sold as of a week ago. That was when they first published this. So good for El Trumpito bringing in that money for the Treasury. But back to this. So Musk and his assistant here, this researcher that he brought in named Antonio Gracias, which means thanks in Spanish. They revealed this shocking chart about these checks, about Social Security numbers that are issued to dead people, to non-citizens, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people were, aghast, if they'll use that word, taken aback, shocked, horror. And I get it. I guess some of my reflexes are kind of dull because of, I look at things in such a jaded manner, because I'm just like, if we looked at a bunch of government stuff and did an audit and they didn't find fraud, I'd be like, no freaking way. There's no way you didn't find somebody doing the wrong thing there. It's got it. Count it again, right? But if they tell me they found fraud, I go, well, of course you found fraud. This is what they do. This is why we need less government. This is it, because it becomes a game of survival of the fittest and longevity. People take the job thinking they're going to serve the public, and they get, in many ways, I'm going to say they get duped. Now, some government jobs are very important. I worked in government in the area I was in. I saw a lot of things that were important. I worked in the abuse of the prevention of child abuse and programmatic and political stuff. Not so much political, but occasionally it was, PR related, And I also worked for a short time in adoptions. And very important work. The work remains important, although there are questions we want to raise. Like, should the government be the biggest adoption agency in a given state? Did the government use a governmental power grab to get control of becoming the biggest orphanage in the state through CPS, through child welfare? Should the government perhaps say, we don't want to be in the business of taking people's children away or housing them in orphanages? Perhaps we should create incentives to help those that are better equipped, that have a mission and a calling to do that, like the local church. Right? When I was a kid, and I'm not that old, I'm 46, I'll be 47 next month. Or I guess in May, right? Next month isn't until tomorrow. But anyway, orphanages were run by churches. That was the main place you wanted to drop off a kid you didn't want. You gave it to the church. Today, it's a fire house, a police station, or a hospital, which is going to turn it over to the government. It's almost like that's the default. And I don't know which one comes first, the chicken or the egg. I would suspect that churches kind of took the back seat on this because the government took the driver's seat. Took it. Didn't ask for it, just took it. Because they had an interest in this for whatever reason. That would be what I would suspect. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody can prove me wrong. But all of this is very revealing. Musk finding all of this stuff, and people, of course, the left is going to criticize him and say, no, he's only saying this because he wants to attack Social Security. If he makes it look like Social Security is yet another scam, Social Security will be toppled the same way they toppled USAID. But the reality is that they won't. They're going to have to just go after the fraud systemically. So they're using their system to find the fraud, to show the fraud, eliminate the fraud, and keep making sure that your abuela and my grandma and everybody else's gets their check. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, to the phones we go. We've got calls from Vermont, Montana, Florida, Tennessee, Ohio, and more. Let's go to Ohio, Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. My man, Paul, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, Rich?
Good to hear from you, man. It's been a while. I put an APB out on you, and I'm glad we found you.
I've just been busy. Hey, I think that Trump, with this running for the third term, I think he's just putting that out there for giving the media something to chomp on. He's clever. And, I think he's doing that. And the reason being, he's got more important things to take care of. That he knows how the fake news is. He's proved that. He's taking care of other things in the country. Yeah,
I think you're spot on.
I think that's what'll happen. I don't see a third term for him. If he does, then the Democrats will be shouting he's another Biden. You know how that goes.
Oh yeah, if not Biden, then the next Biden. Although I think that there's going to be a lot of options on the Republican side, and if we deliver on the economy, I'm pretty sure most people won't want to go with a President Bernie Sanders or a President AOC, all out crazy. Paul, thanks for your call, my man. Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ in the building. Let us continue. I want to go to Jim, Leona, Tennessee, WXDE. Go for it.
Yeah, you were talking about the president running for the third term. I think it would be almost insurmountable to get it situated for him to do that. But he has got a man that he has appointed as his vice president that is a dedicated, decent, honest man. And so I think Trump, as smart as he is, he didn't get into the old rigmarole of getting a person up there that's going to compete with him for the everything. I think that Vance would be perfect.
I think so too. Listen, I like Vance. I like Ron DeSantis. I think there's a number of people that would be great. Vance obviously has a clear advantage, and he's primed. He's primed for the job. He's young. He's learning the game. He's in the mix. He's in Greenland, and he's doing what he's got to do. So no argument from me there. Not an endorsement, but I think a lot of great contenders for sure. Jim in Tennessee, WXD. Thank you, sir. I want to continue. Let's go. Let's swing it over to the middle of the country. A little bit more north. Let's go to Frank, Evergreen, Montana. Go for it.
Hi, Rich. I got a 2-minute.
Well, make it a minute because it's speed round.
Okay, it's political prediction time.
Okay.
WWE 2025 professional wrestling lineup this year will include a black wrestler come back after a 10-year absence that goes by the stage name Boogeyman, and whose specialty was eating large nightcrawler worms and puking them into the mouths of his opponents as well as visiting VIPs. My prediction foresees the Secretary of Education billionaire Linda McMahon, who co-owns WWE with her husband and family, attending an event this year with former 10-year brainworm aficionado, Secretary of Health, RFK Jr., and will likely be attacked by the Marty Wright, a.k.a. the Boogeyman, and force-fed to eating worms again. Kids in schools will soon be marketed lunch pails with RFK Jr.'s picture eating worms.
Now, Frank, who do you equate the Boogeyman to being?
Oh, that's Marty Wright. But anyway.
Marty Wright, got it. I don't know why I was thinking Barack Obama coming back into the fold to take on RFK. It would have been interesting. Frank at Evergreen, KOFI, thank you. Shout out to my man John, Vero Beach, Florida, WTTB in Florida. Shout out to Tony calling us from Canada on WVMT in Vermont. Shout out to Joe, Naperville, Illinois, WLS. Amigos, the music means it's time for me to go. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, take care and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.